My dear friends, thank you for joining me today. There's nothing more irritating than trying to learn a new song. You're doing everything right, or you think you are, and things start buzzing and things start going wrong, and you get more irritated and it gets worse and worse. And it's usually down to a daft mistake, something that is easily remedied. So what I'm going to do today, because it's a Wednesday and most of you watching on Wednesdays are beginners or you've just started off, I'm going to show you what those 10 most common mistakes are and how to fix them. All right, and if you do that, your playing will improve tenfold, literally. All right, before I do that, thank you for the donations to the Tea and Coffee Fenner Fund. If you want to donate to the channel, just click the thanks button down below. You don't have to, everything on the channel is free, but there's a thanks button if you want to pay for the tea and the coffee. All right, appreciate it, thank you. But more important than that, click that thumbs up, because that really circulates these videos, and the more people that learn to play guitar, the better the world is in which we live. All right, so there we go. First thing I want to do, let's look at the chord G. Any old chord, let's look at G for a start. I'll do it this way. So when you play your G, you'll put your fingers on, you've got your book, you've got your songbook out, and you say, right, that's G. And you'll naturally, if you're a beginner, think, well, I'll put it in the middle, it's pretty safe, and you'll do that. Well, that's really bad, okay? Why is it bad? Because those fingers need to be right up against the frets, right up against them, so you can almost feel, well, you can feel them on the tips of your fingers, okay? So you get a nice clean chord. If you put them here, which is only a couple of millimeters to your left, you get that sound if you don't press hard enough. So by having them in the middle, A, you have to press harder, which so you'll get tired, and B, it sounds buzzy. Get it near the frets, get them near the frets, all of them, and it'll sound nice and clean. Clearly, if you're playing a chord like E minor, then we can get this one near the fret. This one, can't get it much nearer than that, so you have to just be aware of that, what I've just said. Make sure you press that a little bit harder so you get a clean chord. All right, that's really important. Now, when you play, another mistake when you're fingering a chord and you're starting off, you know, if you watch me playing it now, you probably think that my fingers are sort of like this. Well, they're not. If I'll do it again, I'll play the G like this so you can see a bit clearer. They're like that. Now, can you see the space between the fingerboard and my fingertips? And I'm leaving it like a big bridge. See, for the open strings to run underneath, and that's really important. So I always say to my students who come to me privately, think of your fingertips, you know, like a ballet dancer dancing on their toes. Okay, it's a daft analogy, but you get what I mean. So put your fingers like this, so the tips of your fingers, not like this, the tips of your fingers right next to the frets. How do we do that? How can we do that? Now, you ladies out there, or anyone with long nails, you've got to be careful these days how you say these things. Anyone with long nails, make sure that they're cut short on the hand that fingers the guitar. All right, as in, put you know, pressing the chords down. Otherwise, A, it'll be really uncomfortable, all right, and B, you will not get your fingertip pressing onto the fingerboard in the right way. You can't use your fingertips if you've got a long nail and it's forcing your hand to do that. So keep your nails cut on the hand that is fingering the guitars. There is no room for glamour on that particular hand. All right, very, very important. Now, say we were playing, you say you've got a song, again, I'll just use the chord G as an example. If we were playing a strummy chord, say we were going to do, I don't know, Wonderwall by Oasis, then we would use this particular inversion of the chord G. Okay, want that? Now, in a book, it might just say the chord G. You don't know what inversion it is. Some of the better books will tell you, but ordinarily it'll just say G. So let me explain why. I'll play a little bit of it. I'm not going to play the whole thing, or I'll get a copyright strike. But you can see that that inversion of G is played like this. All right. So before you even start your song, think of which inversion of the chord am I going to play. Now, you may say, well, you know, how do, you know, give me an example. That's okay. Well, if I was going to play say you know, something like You've Got a Friend, you can see that I'm playing the chord G like this. Why am I playing it like that? Because I need this finger to do stuff with, all right? I can't do stuff in these frets if I'm playing my chord like that or like that. I can only play that type of thing. I can only do it if I'm playing the right inversion of the chord. So it's very important when you're learning a new song, and say for example it's got the chord G, what G are we referring to? Right, that is very, very important. It's a bit like and also you've got to think of what chord is going to come next. You know, it's like snooker. You've always got to think of your next shot. Don't just think of the chord that you're playing now. Think of where am I going next. Okay, so that's important. Okay, so for example, if I'm going from a G to an E minor, I always tend to use this G if I'm playing it just an open thing. And if I want to get to an E minor, which usually follows G, I will just keep this finger where it is and do that. Makes the transition nicer because this particular note, which is common to both chords, is continuing to ring, and it helps fill that little gap. Okay, so little things like that matter. What else have we got? Bar chords, the dreaded bar chords. You know, now that's the one that, you know, most people would, you know, especially beginners, including me when I first started. I hated the chord F, but I soon realised that I needed to know it. You know. Otherwise I would limit all the stuff that I can now play. And my dad, he forced, well not forced me, but he encouraged me, I should say, to learn how to do it. Now, how do you get your finger position right to play a bar chord? All right. Now, most people would quite naturally see, when they see me playing a bar chord, and I'm doing that, you know, you would quite naturally think that the part of the finger that's touching the fingerboard is this part here. You know, you would think that it would do that, okay? Which is completely and utterly wrong, okay? Because why is it wrong? Well, this is all spongy and it's got creases here, and see, and the strings will get stuck in there and they won't ring out and all that. So, well, how do we fix that particular problem? Well, we use the outer side of the finger here, where it's all bony and there's a little bit sticking out like that joint there, and we use that to press the bar. How do we do that? Well, I think I've demonstrated this before, but I'll show you again. If you get your guitar like this, if you want to know how the angle that finger should be in, you put your thumb at the back of the neck and your finger there, and just hold the guitar like that, which takes quite a bit of pressure to do that without it dropping on the floor and smashing. All right, we don't want to do that, but it will naturally pull that finger, roll that finger into the correct position. All right, and then keep it like that, and then curl the other fingers in around it, and you get a really nice position then for that particular bar. Okay, so the side of your finger, my finger is pointing away that way, my nail is over there, it's not pointing towards you like that, it's this way, and your elbow in, get your elbow in, watch, elbows out, you're not going to get the bar, elbow in, push that bar down and have these fingers push against it, and you'll get a really nice clean bar position. And you'll know if you're doing it correctly, because all the little dints from the strings will be on that side of your finger. All right, so that's that done. Now, strumming. Why do people strum? You know, why do people have terrible trouble strumming? I don't know. You know, I do know, and I'm going to share that with you now. When you're strumming, this is the basic. I'll just do a straight rhythm. One, you know, as in 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now my hand is moving down and up, and it's always going to do that. Now watch this. If I play. You could hear 3 different patterns there, but if you were to turn the sound off on this video, you will just see me going, and you'll say, well, how can that be? Now, when you listen to something, you will, you know, the natural inclination, if you were playing, say, Stuck in the Middle with You, you'd sort of go, you know, which is understandable, but it's completely wrong. You get your rhythm going, and the trick is to mute the strings. Now that's for another lesson. We can go into that. In fact, if you go back to some of my masterclasses, I'll show you how to do all that. The point I'm making is with the strum, your hand is always moving, all right? So if I keep it nice and simple, you will have heard this strum. Down, down, up, up, down, up. Or you'll have heard this pattern. When you hear that for the first time, your inclination will be, if you're just starting, to do this, which is completely wrong. Down, down, up, down, up, down, down. And it works with shuffle rhythms as well. A shuffle rhythm is like a swing rhythm, you know. Say, I was going to do this. With no name, but with exactly the same movement of the arm, you could do something like this. Exactly the same. See what I mean? The hand movement is always there like a ticking clock. All right. What you do with it then is, you know, that's another layer of information. All right, that we can look at. What am I doing with that ticking clock? You know, or okay, so the key is keep the right hand moving. Now, when you're changing chords, you say, well, if I keep my hand moving, what happens when I change chord? I'll let some open strings, and I'll say, yes, you will. Good, because that's what you're supposed to do. You know, now let's be perfectly clear about this. These guitars that we're playing, this steel string guitar, was not really, you know, guitars weren't designed to hit all the strings at once going. You know, guitars were designed to play like classical music, you know, where open strings would be written into the piece in order for the player to be able to move from one position to the next. Okay, like as a pianist, you know, if you go to a pianist and say, you know, I want to learn to play the piano like Paul McCartney and go they would, first of all, once they'd stopped laughing at you, they would say, that's not playing the piano, mate. You know, playing the piano is as a classical guitarist would play the guitar in there. You know, McCartney uses the chords like it, and he sings the tune over the top, which we've all grown to love, but it's not really designed to be played that way. Okay, it's something that's come later. In the same way that when we strum a guitar, it's not really meant to be strummed. I know it sounds great, but it has its disadvantages, and one of them is when you change chord, you have no choice. We have two choices. You can either stop playing, in which case everybody will look at you as if you've made a mistake, or you have to bring your fingers off, particularly if it's a fast song. So you know, you've got to, I'm bringing my fingers off, you can't even notice I'm doing it. So how do we do that? I'll use the chord sequence G, E minor, A minor and D7 to demonstrate. Okay, I'm going to play my G like this. Why? Because I know I'm going to be going to an E minor, so I'm thinking ahead and I want to keep this finger on. So I'll do one bar on each chord. Now I'm bringing my fingers off on every single change there, which you probably don't even notice. And everybody does it. Seasoned guitar players doing it without saying it. Some tutors will say, well, you shouldn't do that, it's wrong. Well, and then they'll go and do it. You know, even Mr. Brian May talks about this when I watched him doing, I was doing a thing called House of the Rising Sun, and I explained to my students that, you know, every time he hits the third string, it's open. It doesn't matter what chord we were playing. And it sounds really weird and odd when it's slow. But even Brian May, I heard him talking about the very same thing when he was learning. And he confirmed what seasoned players know. You use open strings. You know, it's not musically correct, but you have no choice but to use them when you're playing a guitar in an unorthodox way. So let's look at that pattern I was doing. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 off. Now I'm going to leave that finger on because it's common to both chords. And then I'm going to drop this 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 off. And then I'm going to drop to the A minor. And I'm thinking ahead now. That first finger's going to be common to the A minor and the D7th, so I'm going to leave that one on during the next change. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... See the way the hand's always moving? Another thing that's very important, when you're changing chords, where's the bass note live? On a G, it lives there, so it's fine to play it. When you're playing an E minor, the bass note lives here, so it's fine to play it. When you're playing an A minor, the bass note lives on the 5th string. We know that because it's the note A, obviously. So we don't really want to play we don't want to overpower it with this one, so our thumb will just touch the string. Thus, is that word again? Thus, muting it, enabling the A, the root of the chord to sing out, which is what we want to hear, rather than we don't want to hear that. That note we only use, that 6th string, if we're doing like an alternating bass pattern, but we're not doing that yet. And then when we come down to our D7th, again we will keep this finger here to mute it, and we'll play our D. Now we can get away with the 5th string on the D7th. You know, technically you'd start with this note, but strumming wise you can get away with the 5th. You can't get away with this. It sounds horrible. There is one other alternative when you're playing a D of any, mainly D or D7. This thumb can actually press that bass string in at the 2nd fret, which is quite common. That then enables you to play all 6 strings. But things like that, they're the sort of things, if you're playing a D7th and you've spent all your time trying to get the chord down, you're keeping your thumb out of the way, which is the mistake that's going to cause that horrible sound. See the difference just that one little thing makes. Okay, so we got to fix that. We've talked about lifting the fingers when we're changing chords. That's common. You don't have to do it if it's a really slow song. But you know, it's not a problem if you're playing in most of the strings, you know, when you're playing open chords, there's a lot of open strings anyway, so you won't notice. Timing mistakes are always noticeable. Even the dog will give you a sideways glance if you cock up the rhythm, all right? Excuse me, right, plec. Let me have a quick swig. Right, holding your plec. That's another one that people mess up on. Don't hold it like this, because you're trying to stop it from slipping around your fingers. It's going to do that. If you want to try and stop it, just moisten the tips of your fingers as you would if you were turning the pages of a book, and hold it like that. Use a 0.73. Don't use anything heavy. Don't buy all these plecs that you see on the internet. It's all stupid shapes and all that with rubber grips. They're all crap, honestly, trust me. All they do is they get stuck in the strings and make it worse. Just get a plec like that. Nice cheap grey plec with maybe a little bit of something at the top. All right, I use these what is it, USA nylon, Dunlop, Jim Dunlop, they're good. And I always use a 0.73. It's like the Three Bears porridge. It's not too heavy, it's not too light, it's just right, okay? Another strange analogy from the Fenner household. It's only morning, I haven't even started yet. All right, so holding the plec between your thumb and your 1st finger. Lightly, don't hold it too tightly. If I was gonna stroke my cat, you know, with the plec, I wouldn't, if I squeeze it in, it'll run off because you'll be causing it some serious damage. So, you know, you've got to be able to feel, if you're holding your plec too tightly and do that, it'll stick in and it'll hurt. So that's a little way of checking. So nice and light. It's got to have some movement, okay? If you hold it too tightly, it will dig into the strings, and it makes it difficult to strum. So you want to hold it lightly so there's a bit of flexibility in there. Okay? And always keep your fingers fanned out. Don't play them in a ball like this. It's a horrible way of playing. Okay? Or using these fingers. Use your 1st finger and your thumb, because there will be times where you'll want to use the fingers and the plec. Okay? Maybe further down the line, but it's something, again, think ahead. It's much nicer like this. It's like a fan, and you can do that. Now, the reason that's really important, I was playing before things like Stuck in the Middle with You. Now watch this. See, I'm using... I would find that very difficult to do if my hand was in a ball. I couldn't do it. I did Benny and the Jets last week. Again, I'm using examples to show you why it's very important to keep your fingers like this. What am I doing? Because my fingers are fanned out, I can go and do the mute. If it was in a ball, I'd really have to struggle. It's difficult. Doesn't look very elegant either. It's horrible. So keep your fingers out, hold the pleck. Never strum when you, and also don't let your pleck point down or up. Keep it flat, and so it's got some give and take. All right. Now let's have a quick look at finger picking. Another mistake. Clearly, we've looked at the being near the fret. Very important. Finger picking, of course, very important because each string is isolated. It's not going to be masked by other strings if you're not pressing hard enough. So finger placement is very important. So what I tend to do, if I'm not using my first string on, say I'm playing something like this, I will use my third and fourth finger to somewhere to anchor my hand. Okay, so it doesn't wander around. Okay. If I was using if I'm going to play the first string, clearly I'll lift it. But when I'm not, I tend to do that. It just gives, a lot of players do that. It's not essential. I tend to do it when I'm doing that sort of thing. The other thing is when I'm playing, watch my arm. If you move your arm when you're picking, you know, by the time, think of it like a pencil. You know, when you're holding a pencil, you know, if you were to hold your pencil like that and then try to be neat, of course the slightest movement here is a big movement down here. We don't want that. Similarly, when you're finger picking or with the pleck, you want to try and control the movement. You don't want to go too nuts with it. So you'll notice that I'm moving my fingers and not my arm. I'm not going like this. And that finger, see the way of keeping that G? If I was playing the G like that, it's fine if I'm not going to do any fancy stuff. But if I wanted to do any of that fiddly stuff, I'd have to play the G like that. That's very important. Now, the other thing to do, finally, the last thing to do is, and the most obvious one really, is the posture. When you get a lot of young lads, they watch their favourite pop star on the telly, and they'll see him with the guitar down here, giving it all this nonsense, right? They don't realise that the recording that they're listening to has been pre-recorded, and the guys are usually miming. When they were in the studio playing that, Mr. Slash and all that with his top hat, he would be sitting there like I am now going, you know. He would be concentrating, he would be controlling like that. When he's on stage and all that, you know, and he's miming or whatever, he could do it. Key is, don't have your guitar slung too low, because if you do, think about it. If you want to use the tips of your fingers as I've suggested, like this, you need to have your guitar, you know, this is if you want to play well, you know. You need to have your guitar reasonably, you know, high up. Not too high, but high enough. If it's too low, the first thing that happens is your fingers will do this. And they will naturally, because you can't get down that far. So you don't want to do that, okay? Have your guitar, if you want to play it well, if you're playing power chords in one of these, just, you know, fine. You can just, because you're only playing one shape, you can do that. But we're here to learn to play properly, aren't we, folks? Not that there's anything wrong with all that stuff. It has its place. And I'm here to show you how to do all these different things in order that you can play different types of music. And posture is important. When I'm holding my guitar, I don't know whether you can see it, I've got my legs crossed, which is why I have difficulty walking down the stairs once I finish these things. So in order that I can keep the guitar in the right position, I've got my arm, my elbow locked into position here. Now, again, this is an important thing. How much pressure do I put here? Well, if I were to show you without this other hand being on, this guitar would fly across the room. So I apply pressure here, I apply pressure here, and thus, there's that word again, it enables me to get some good pressure here without the, you know, obviously I don't want it to do that. So pressure, you'll end up with a bit of a sore neck if you're doing it right, because your body's got to get used to pulling this way and pulling that way in order to create the right amount of finger pressure on those strings. Right, so there we are. A quick crash course in the 10 massive mistakes that can mess up an otherwise really nice performance. Okay, so whenever you're playing and something's not quite right, you know. And the other thing is, when the first thing to do, if say somebody's messing around and playing, whenever there's a cock up, you know, they're always looking at this hand. They're always looking at the left hand as if this is the one that's always making the mistake. More often than not, it's this hand. Okay, hitting the wrong strings, not holding the pluck correctly. But they always, you know, they always look at this hand. And try to practice independently with two hands. For example, if I was learning a pick, you know, when we do that sort of the Travis picking, the outer inner thing, you know, 5-2-4-3, 5-2-4-3, or outer inner. You know, practice the pick without the chord. Just get used, so this hand gets some practice. Because if you cock up with this hand, this one stops, it never gets a chance to work. So. So what I'm doing at the end of every bar, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3. There's the strings again. Okay, so try and practice. If you know, if you're working on a picky song, try and isolate the pick, especially my stuff where you can see the pick indicated clearly on my idiot proof stuff. Practice that in isolation. Just mute the strings. Watch TV then without getting on everybody's nerves. And there we are. Right, there we are. That's done. Wednesday lesson. Again, thank you for the donations to the channel with a little thanks button down below. For the people have been ringing me, not ringing me up, but messaging me, say, how do we donate to the channel? Well, it's just a thanks button. There's a little row of buttons down below. One of them says thank you. Just click on that. You know, I'm not very good with all these computer things. I'm so old. I have to ask toddlers to show me how things work. All right. So, but you know, that's where it is if you want to donate to the Tea and Coffee Fund. Saturday I'll be back with you. I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet. I'll think of something. I'm working on a new album, so I'm in the studio on Saturday, so it might be something a bit easier. We'll see. We'll see. Right, but in the meantime, you look after yourselves, love you and leave you, and I'll see you hopefully on Saturday. Take care.